Ave, true to Christ. Hey everybody, this is Charitable Christianity, and today we are going to be talking about Redeemed Zoomer's video on why denomination hopping is sinful. Now, I'll talk a little bit why I think it is, and instead of playing his video, I'm just going to use the pictures that he has on screen, because usually when Redeemed Zoomer makes these videos, his script is just a little too on the nose, and I don't feel like it really adds anything, but other than what's already on the screen. He just kind of reads it verbatim and then maybe gives a couple of examples, but I don't usually find it edifying. The reason denomination hopping is such a bad idea is because here's what happened in the original, in the early church. You had a certain way that we're supposed to be taught, and you're brought into the church, and it usually would take about 3 years for you to be properly catechized or something like that. And it'd be the same as if you got excommunicated. It would take this huge, long process for you to be a part of this, because to understand the faith, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of things that you have to do to be a part of the faith. Well, then, as the ecumenical councils went on, they made more of a streamlined path of how you would become part of the faith. And then what we see in Vatican I and Vatican II, this is where you see the formation of the strong institutions that we see in Catholicism, which led to things like OCIA and RCIA, the order or rites of initiated Christian adults, so that people like me could have a streamlined pathway to get into the church, because those were the people that would fall through the cracks and were an underserved community when it came to the church militant, the laity, those who wanted to be part of the faith but didn't really have a way in. And it was shocking reading Vatican II that we didn't have those things beforehand. That was very surprising for me when I read Vatican II. But what happens with denomination hopping is that because you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is learn about the faith first and then commit to a church. What a lot of Protestant churches do is they have you come in, they kind of have you learn from the pastor, and you just kind of learn on the job and get like this experiential teaching where you have to listen to your internal moral compass, and you're supposed to discern God's secret will from that. And in doing that, that leads you to destructive pathways, because first of all, you are a baby Christian. You don't have the discernment to properly understand these things. Secondly, the problem that you run into is not only do you have you don't have the discernment to properly tell between the voice of demons and the voice of God. You don't have any boundaries or guardrails or magisterium unless you're part of the Presbyterian, Lutheran, or Anglican churches to properly have some sort of pathway for you to learn properly. Or I said properly so many times, for you to learn without falling into error. And even within the Protestant churches, you have a lot of liberal takeover, man-made traditions of female pastors, and just so many different things that go away from what the fullness of the faith is and having a proper liturgy. Anglicanism is probably going to be the closest to Catholicism that you're going to see in Protestantism. Presbyterian is kind of close, but there's a lot of problems within it, of liberalizing and whatnot. And me being in Seattle, I've been to a Presbyterian PCUSA church, and I can definitely see that the liberal influence is definitely in that church. And you got to understand, this is one of the churches I went to is on the map of Redeemed Zoomer's GPS map of traditional churches that he has on there. So that was kind of an interesting experience. But anyways, if you're constantly hopping churches because you're trying to get like a vibe of it and you're trying to see if this is your home church, again, you're relying on your feelings, and you need to fully understand the church before you go in. And this is why I say you need to go to OCA. It doesn't matter if you're Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, non-denominational, Mormon, Hindu, Muslim, any faith. If you're going to come towards Christianity and you're going to try to be part of the faith, you need to go to OCA. And I'm not telling you this because it's like, oh, I'm Team Catholic, I want you to be Catholic, because I do. But I mean, like, genuinely, for your soul, you need to be equipped to really know what the truth is. And Catholicism is going to help you give you that springboard and that foundation. And I don't expect you to trust Catholicism. I don't expect you to believe everything that Catholicism has, because it took me a long time to accept it. I had to do 3 years of going through toil and drudgery and pain to get confirmed. I was delayed quite a bit because of my journey, but it was worth all the effort. But again, if you are properly set up, at least you can know what the truth is, and then you can properly find your way towards other churches. And this is not something that I'm expecting you to become Catholic once you're done with it, but at least you have an idea of what faith really means. You're not going to get all the church fathers or the ecumenical councils from OCA, but at least you're going to have something that's going to help you make an informed decision. That's why you shouldn't church hop. Now, we're going to switch to Redeemed Zoomer's video here. Again, I'm going to just do the pictures, and we're not going to focus so much on what Redeemed Zoomer has to say. But so he has the why hopping is a bad idea. So he has good news: young people are more interested in Christianity than ever. And then the bad news: the LARPing that happens, or the live action role playing. And the example he uses here is Gen Z in the 2010s. You had the identity politics that they would play, where they would be different genders, different identities, and they would almost put that on as like something that they could feel in control of, especially if you saw gender fluid people. They would go between male and female every day, and it'd just be like whatever they were feeling, and they were completely going by their feelings. You also see this in paganism and in Wicca, where people are completely going with their feelings and letting their feelings lead them in their faith and in how they do rituals. And there's just a hedonistic, it's all about me and what I feel, and it doesn't matter what other people feel. They either have to submit to what I feel and accept it, because my truth is my truth and I get to speak it. And then Gen Z in the 2020s we have here, where they're jumping between a bunch of denominations, and he's trying to make this categorical error of comparing the two. And while it definitely seems like it's similar, it's not, because what's happening with Gen Z in the 2010s is that they're searching for these identities because they have a spiritual hole in their heart that they're not filling, and they're trying to fill it with identities. Now, you could try to make the same case with church hopping, but really what's happening when you're church hopping, it comes from poor catechesis. You don't even understand the faith. And so you're looking for the true faith, and you're just trying to chase what you keep thinking is the truth. When you're not properly catechized, you don't have the proper discernment, you don't understand anything, and you're not even donning the armor of God. So already, you can see the problem with Redeemed Zoomer and how he's interpreting this. So where he says it does count and doesn't count, we have, just reading this real quick just to see what he's saying. And you can pause this if you want to read it yourself. Okay, so the doesn't count, didn't really study theology until now, and now that I did, I want to be Anglican. That was me. It does count. Anyone who's a Catholic is a heretic. Anyone who's not Orthodox is a heretic. So again, he's trying to create a false dichotomy of these extremes that you got to see where it's just like, oh, I made a sensible decision, and then over here it's like, what a heretic. And then you go to another denomination, you're like, what a heretic, and you just keep making the same mistakes. There definitely is people like that, but when you denomination hop, even if you are studied on the thing, I still wouldn't recommend denomination hopping. Again, I would recommend going to OCIA through Catholicism, so you can have grounded truth, and then you can make your decision from there. What my sponsor told me was, when I ran away from Catholicism, he's like, well, why don't you just try going to it? And if the Holy Spirit isn't guiding you, then, it's not for you. And that was such a based and real response that he gave me that I was like, I don't have an argument against that, because who am I to judge when I don't even know? And so that helped further my education and really catechize me properly. Because before I was doing everything myself, and I was treating it like I knew the interpretations of Scripture and that I could trust my English skills, since I was very talented when it came to English and reading and interpretation of story and understanding themes and whatnot. So he's creating a false dichotomy here. I think that anytime you are poorly catechized and you're trying to go between denominations, it's still bad, because you need to have that you need to be catechized properly, so you actually understand the faith, and so you're not just constantly being led by the spirits of evil, because you can't test the spirits since you don't have the proper discernment and you don't even know what to test for. That's religious suicide that you're doing, that you are trying to enter into something that is not going to be edifying for you. So then his next slide that he has here is, what's wrong with it? So that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves, and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Ephesians 4:14. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, here, there's this, he's kind of talking about what I'm talking about, where if you're denomination hopping and you're constantly getting messages from everybody that, oh, you should become this, you should become that, it's not going to help you. Now, this is where some of you are going to be like, well, if you go to OCIA, you're going to be told by the teacher that the Catholic faith is the only way. And yeah, you're going to be told that, but I would much rather you be taught by a OCIA teacher, where you have an institution with proven teaching methods that are going to give you a grounded idea of the faith. And even though, they're going to not exactly have the most favorable view of Protestantism, and they're going to kind of give you the ideas of why Protestantism doesn't work, and they're going to sell you the company man talking points of why Catholicism does work, you're still going to understand the problems with Protestantism. And then when you go into the church, you're going to be good to go. But if you're the type of person that you get swayed by all the winds and you're just going to be Team Catholic and whatnot, I mean, God's going to humble you, because that's not going to fly in the Catholic faith. You can't just be a Protestant hater your whole life. It is really easy for people to build up that kind of haughty behavior, because it's really easy to Catholic or Protestant bash if you aren't a Catholic or Protestant. But again, I would much rather you get a grounded education than you just go to the winds to and fro and just kind of flop about like a magic carp that has no PP, and you're just doing flail. Because all that does is, yeah, you're attacking the enemy in a Pokemon battle, but you're also doing damage to yourself. So it's just, or is it struggle? Yeah, I think it's struggle when you have no PP. Anyways, so next we have consistency matters, but let your yes be yes, and your no be no, for whatever more than these is from the evil one. Matthew 5:37. So, there's also the interdenomination hopping where you go back and forth, and I'm one of these people because I went from non-denominational to Bible alone to Catholicism, like prospecting Catholicism for a year, and then being like, I want to commit to the church. And then I was going to be OCIA. In OCIA, I ended up, because my schedule wasn't able to make it, had to wait a whole year, got into a whole mess, ran away from the church, became Free Methodist because I did a online test, which that's a whole can of worms about divination that I can get into, and why online tests should not be put forward, and why when Redeem Zoomer did the what's your denomination test, I don't think that's something you should be sharing with, because that is divination, that is a sin. If you guys want me to make a video on that, I will explain it. I would be more than, you know what, I'm going to write it down. I'll make a short, and it'll probably be out on December 6th or something like that. But we'll see. I have so many videos that I'm making. But anyways, the point I'm getting at is I was doing a bunch of denomination hopping, and it's just because I was chasing my feelings, and I was just focused on how I thought God was calling me into things. And that erroneous type of mentality, especially when you aren't properly catechized and you don't properly understand the faith, it leads to a lot of goofy decisions that you can save yourself the trouble if you go to OCIA. So the other thing is with consistency is you need to be committed to something. You can't just be to and fro and just kind of give your commitment and just go to Sunday church whenever you want. That's not what you're doing when you're becoming a Christian. You are committing your life to God, and you are giving things to God, and it's going to be uncomfortable with some of the sacrifices you're going to make. I could be playing video games all the time since I live by myself and I'm single at the moment. But I'm not doing that. When I'm at work, if I'm not tired on my split, because I have a 2-hour split between my shifts at work, that I can sleep if I want to, but if I'm awake enough, I will do Bible and catechism study. If on my breaks and lunches, I do liturgy of hour prayers. I'm doing each of the hours, each break and lunch, when I get to my car, when I get home from church, if I'm not doing anything extra in the day. And then I'm also doing the rosary prayer in my car. I'm doing Bible studies with the Discord, which, by the way, Discord is in the description. You can click that, join if you want to join for soak prayers and Bible studies. I do those on Thursdays, 11:45 to 12:45 for the soak prayer, and 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. for the Bible study, all PST time. But when you aren't consistent and you aren't donning the armor of God and you don't even know what you're doing, that inconsistency is going to leave fractures in what you believe, and you're going to get confused if you're hopping between denominations because you don't understand what the denomination actually believes. And even if you have an idea of it, you don't understand the nuance. And like I said, if you don't have the discernment, you haven't trained your discernment, you don't know what the truth actually is, and you're not fully grounded in the faith, it's going to be really easy for you to be led astray and to fall into heretical churches. Fall into churches that say that they're Christian or Protestant or Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, but really they're just a cult. Wearing the sheep's clothing, but really being a wolf in disguise. So long-term communities. And I think that this is a great example, because what happens is when you are denomination hopping, You're just going from one church to another, just trying to take in the culture. But what we're called to do as Christians is we need to be communal. We need to be making connections with people. And if you're constantly hopping different denominations, you aren't staying long enough to build these relationships. And then if you are staying, doing what I did, and I was going to 4 churches at once. I was going to a Catholic church, I was going to a traditional Baptist church, I was going to a PCUSA Presbyterian church, and I was also going to a Free Methodist church. And in all those churches, I was making connections with people, but because I ended up going with Catholicism, I definitely could have kept in contact with a lot of them if I wanted to. But now it's harder for me to leave because I'm building all these connections with so many people, and it becomes uncomfortable to have that tough conversation that, hey, I'm actually going to be converting to Catholicism completely. But, fortunately, at the Catholic church that I still am at now, I'm a part of the community. I'm just about everybody knows me there, and I've made a lot of connections because of that, and that's exactly how you're supposed to grow with other people in the faith. It's the same thing with marriage. You're supposed to grow with your wife. You're not supposed to be whoring yourself out and just getting as many partners as possible. It's the same reason you can't be denomination hopping. You have to be committed to something. That is what will edify you and strengthen you. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get confused, and it's going to lead you to fall into heresy, even though you're going to church every Sunday, because you don't know the difference.
Who are committed long.
No more Richard. Okay, so what else does he have to say? Religious trends. So Redeemed Zoomer is trying to push back against this whole trend of seeing a trend and then hopping on religion. I think that seeing a trend and then investigating the church and just kind of seeing what it's all about and trying to become part, enjoy a new culture, I think that is a beautiful thing, whether you're going to a mega church or an Eastern Orthodox church or anything like that, because you just want to see what the hype is about and kind of see what it's like. I think there's nothing wrong with that, except if you're not properly catechized. Because if you're just going to different churches and you're not properly catechized, again, what are you doing? You need to be committed to something and stick with one denomination at a time and then move on. And this is why I'm saying OCIA, because while you still need to go to church in the OCIA program for you to get the full experience, the reason you're doing that is because it is allowing you to be grounded in it. Now, some of you that heard me just say that, you're going to be like, oh, I knew it. You were trying to trick us into becoming part of the Catholic Church. But again, it's grounded because you have structure that is being added to your life. Because you have the liturgy where you hear one reading, a responsorial psalm, a second reading from, usually these are from the Old Testament, and then you have the gospel, which comes from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then you have an institutionalized teaching that is infallible of this is how you properly understand these passages, and this is what you take from it. And if you're not listening to it, it's just going to sound like this is just a 15-minute homily where he's giving you some dumb story. But if you're actually listening and you have the discernment and you have the biblical and foundational knowledge, you will learn from it. But the cool thing is, the church is on a calendar. So if you don't hear it this year, 3 years later, when you hear it again on that day, you're going to understand it better. So this is why, again, even if you're not Catholic, and I know it sounds crazy because you're like, well, if you don't know the discernment, how are you going to get away from this? But would you rather go to a Protestant church where you got to figure everything out, or would you rather go to OCIA where you can get a proper education, do this in the right way, and be in a solid church? And then if it turns out like within a couple of weeks that it's not working for you and you feel like this just isn't for you, I can't force you to stay with, we can't coerce you. That goes against Vatican II. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But don't think that just because you're going to go to this church and it makes you feel special and, you're going to be on fire for God and you're going to do all these great works and all this, it doesn't mean that it's going to be long term. Because if you came to the faith because you realized that the life you were living wasn't worth it and it wasn't taking you anywhere and it just made you feel miserable, you have to be careful that you're not repeating the past. And even if you're confused, you can join the Discord, you can talk to me. I am more than happy to try and mentor you in getting through this process because I've been through OCIA. Now, I'm not like a mature Catholic, so I'm not going to be able to be like the best sponsor ever and it's just like, yep, I can be your sponsor and I can answer all questions of the faith, and I'm totally qualified to be your mentor. But I'm just here to help if you have like questions and you're confused about things and you're not sure where to go. And he has here, it is better to be consistently in the wrong denomination than sometimes inconsistently in the right denomination. Yeah, because you're going to get better time if you commit to one denomination than if you're just going to a bunch of different denominations and you're getting different messages and you're not fully understanding the word. Rebelling against upbringing. I don't even need to read this one. This is a big one. So a lot of times people will grow up in a church and they'll have sore spots and they'll have pain and they'll have hurts that come from other people that did things to them. And you got to realize that that's not God's fault, okay? That's people that did their thing with you. Those bad experiences were not something you had to be submitted to, but they happened. So we have to learn how to move on from it. We have to learn how to process it. And we have to learn how to not blame a whole group or denomination of people just because of the experiences you had. And we got to figure out how we can look at objective truth in this situation. So we also have to be open-minded to the faith and realize that we don't know everything and we have to let God guide us. So if you are staunchly anti-Catholic or staunchly anti-non-denominational or staunchly anti-Protestant, think about why. Why are you having such a strong emotional reaction? Because usually there's some sort of internal root problem that you're having that is turning you away because you're giving into your malice, your wrath, your anger, your envy, your hatred, and it's corrupting you from the inside. So whatever it is you're holding on to, you've got to let it go. And you got to really approach the faith as like a child. And does he have anything else? So when is it okay to convert? This is basically everything I've talked about over the video. So yeah, this is everything, guys. This is why denomination hopping doesn't help you at all. So again, if you want to have the best chance, go to OCIA, enroll, go to the Catholic Church. If it's just not what you're feeling, think about, is it because you're rebelling? Is it because you're uncomfortable? What is it you're feeling? And really sit with that. If you need advice while going to OCIA or trying to learn in the Catholic Church, you can talk to me. I'm willing to field as many questions as you have. If you want to talk with me, I can set up voice chat or video chat with you and we can sit down and talk and really help you with that. Because I can't make you be Catholic, okay? I can give you as much knowledge as I can and try to equip you. But if you make your decision at the end of the day that you want to be Anglican or you want to be non-denominational or you want to be Mormon I can try and explain as much as I can why that's a bad idea and why you'd be better off in the Catholic Church. But I can't force you into the Catholic Church. I will just try to support your decision as much as I can and, affirm what is true and condemn what is not true. But you get the final say at the end of the day. So, anyways, guys, that is everything. Feel free to tell me in the comments what you think and what your experiences with denomination hopping is. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Peace be with you all, and bye.